They said the Harris mansion was a house of peace, but that night, screams tore through its marble halls. A hot, pressing iron hissed on the floor, the smell of burned cloth and skin filled the air, and a young maid cried for mercy while the billionaire's wife stood over her, shaking with rage. What no one knew was that this moment, born out of jealousy and pain, would uncover a truth buried for 24 years, a truth that would destroy one life and save another. The Harris estate in Chicago stood tall and silent, surrounded by trimmed lawns and silver gates that seemed to touch the sky. Inside, everything sparkled. The chandeliers glowed, the floors shone like glass, and every picture on the wall looked perfectly placed. But behind the beauty, there was emptiness, the kind that no money could fill. Michael Harris, the man who owned it all, sat alone in his study. The clock ticked softly, the sound echoing through the quiet room. He had spent the whole evening looking through old papers, old photographs, and files from the Harris Foundation. Yet his mind was not on business tonight. It was on something he couldn't name, something heavy that had lived in his heart since the night his sister Lily died in a fire when he was 19. He stared at a small picture on his desk, one of Lily smiling in her Sunday dress, a gold pendant hanging around her neck. It was the only thing the fire didn't destroy. He touched the edge of the frame and whispered her name under his breath. Lily. Downstairs, Brianna Walker was finishing her work for the night. She was 23, quiet, polite, and never complained. Every morning she polished the tables, scrubbed the floors, and made sure the house smelled like lemon and soap. She had only worked at the mansion for 6 months, yet she had already learned how to move like a shadow. Brianna had a small gold pendant too, one she always wore close to her heart. She didn't know where it came from. The nuns at St. Mary's orphanage told her it was found with her when she was left on their doorstep as a baby. She never took it off. It was the only thing that made her feel she belonged somewhere. That night, after cleaning the kitchen, Brianna quietly folded the towels and walked toward the laundry room. The house was calm, and she could hear soft music playing from upstairs, where Mrs. Laura Harris was dressing for a charity dinner. Brianna smiled faintly as she picked up the last shirt to iron. She never imagined what was about to happen. Laura Harris was a beautiful woman, but beauty couldn't hide the bitterness in her heart. Her marriage to Michael looked perfect from the outside, but inside she was angry, jealous, and lonely. She had seen the way her husband looked at the new maid, not with desire, but with a kind of calm that she hadn't seen in years. That calm made her furious. When Laura came down to check the laundry, she stopped at the door and stared. Brianna was ironing one of Michael's shirts. Her gold pendant caught the light and shone softly against her brown skin. Laura's eyes narrowed. Something about that pendant felt too familiar, too close. "Where did you get that?" Laura's voice cut through the silence. Brianna looked up, confused. "Ma'am?" "That necklace," Laura said, stepping closer. "Where did you steal it from?" Brianna froze. "I didn't steal it, ma'am. It's mine." "Yours?" Laura's tone turned sharp. "Do you know how much that pendant looks like the Harris family crest? You think I wouldn't notice?" Brianna shook her head, her hands trembling. "Please, ma'am, I've had it since I was a baby." The nun said. "Liar!" Laura shouted, slapping the ironing board so hard that the hot iron toppled and landed near Brianna's foot. Steam filled the air. "You think you can wear something like that in my house? You think I don't see how my husband looks at you?" Tears filled Brianna's eyes. "Ma'am, please, I swear I haven't done anything wrong." Laura picked up the iron, her hand shaking. "You little thief," she hissed. "You want to act innocent? Then let's see how you explain this." The iron was still hot. Brianna stepped back, fear flooding her voice. "Ma'am, please, don't." "Laura?" Michael's voice boomed from the doorway. The sound froze everything. The iron clattered to the floor, rolling against the tiles with a loud metallic thud. Laura turned, her face pale. Michael stood there, his eyes wide, his breath short. "What in God's name are you doing?" he shouted, rushing forward. He grabbed the iron and pushed it away. "Have you lost your mind?" "She stole from us, Michael," Laura cried, pointing at Brianna. "She stole my jewelry. Look at that pendant around her neck." Michael turned to Brianna. His eyes fell on the pendant, and something inside him stopped. The gold pendant gleamed softly in the light, with a small letter H engraved at the center. The same design he had seen every night for the past 24 years in his sister's photo. He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Where did you get this?" Brianna's hands shook as she touched it. "I don't know, sir. It was with me when I was left at St. Mary's orphanage. I've had it my whole life." Michael's eyes filled with confusion. He took the pendant gently, staring at the engraving as if the world had stopped moving. "This belonged to my sister, Lily," he whispered. "She died when she was 5. The room went silent. Even Laura's anger froze in shock. Brianna's lips trembled. "Sir, I'm sorry. I don't understand." Michael stepped back slowly. His mind felt like it was breaking apart. He looked at her face, her eyes, her soft voice. Something about her felt too familiar, too close to forget. He turned to Laura. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" she gasped. "Get out of this room," he repeated, his voice firm. "Now." Laura's face flushed with anger, but she obeyed, storming upstairs with quick steps. Michael turned back to Brianna. "Tomorrow morning my lawyer Adam Reed will come here. We're doing a DNA test. I need to know who you are." Brianna nodded weakly, her tears falling. "Yes, sir." Michael stared at her one last time before walking out. The pendant still hung around her neck, glinting under the laundry light like a secret finally waking up after years of silence. As Brianna sank to the floor, her body shaking, she whispered softly to herself, "What's happening to me?" Upstairs, Michael stood in his dark study, his hands pressed against the cold window. The city lights of Chicago shimmered outside, but all he could see was fire. The night his sister vanished came rushing back, and for the first time in 24 years, he wasn't sure if the past had ever truly ended. The next morning, the Harris mansion was quiet, too quiet. The sun slipped through the curtains like a whisper, but no one dared to breathe too loudly. The events of the night before still hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. Brianna sat on the edge of her small bed in the servants' quarters, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her uniform was neatly pressed, but her face told a different story. She had hardly slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mrs. Harris standing over her with the hot iron. Her voice filled with hate. She looked down at the gold pendant resting on her chest. The little letter H glowed softly in the morning light. Her heart beat fast. Could it really be true? Could I be related to them? She shook her head. "No, that's impossible. People like me don't belong in places like this." A soft knock came at her door. When she opened it, Mr. Parker, the butler, stood there with his usual calm face. His gray hair was neatly brushed, but his eyes carried worry. "Mr. Harris wants to see you in the study," he said. Brianna nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, sir." She followed him down the long hallway. Every step echoed against the marble floor. The mansion felt colder today, like it was holding its breath. Mrs. Turner, the head housekeeper, watched from the corner, her face pale. She knew something big had happened, but she didn't dare ask. When Brianna reached the study, Michael Harris was standing by the window again, just like the night before. His eyes were fixed on the garden outside, but his mind was far away. A man in a gray suit sat in a chair across from him, holding a briefcase. Adam Reed, his lawyer and longtime friend. "Come in," Michael said softly. Brianna stepped inside, her head bowed. She could feel her hands trembling again. Adam Reed stood and gave her a kind smile. "Good morning, Miss Walker. I'm here to take a DNA sample. It's just a quick test, nothing to worry about." Brianna nodded. Yes, sir. Michael turned around slowly. His eyes looked tired, but there was something new in them, a mixture of hope and fear. Brianna, he said, last night was not your fault. I need you to know that. Whatever happens, I will find the truth. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her voice shaking. Adam took out a small kit, swabbed the inside of Brianna's mouth, and then did the same for Michael. It was over in minutes, but the silence that followed felt endless. The results will be ready in a few days, Adam said, closing the briefcase. I'll handle everything personally. After he left, the room stayed quiet. Brianna stood still, waiting for Michael to dismiss her, but instead, he walked to his desk and picked up the old photograph again, the one of him and his sister, Lily. He turned it around and showed it to her. This was taken when I was 19, he said quietly. That little girl beside me was Lily. She was 5. She had that same pendant you're wearing. Brianna stared at the photo. Her heart tightened. The child in the picture had a smile so bright it felt familiar, almost like looking at a memory she didn't know she had. Michael sighed, setting the picture down. The night she died, there was a fire at our home near Charleston. I tried to save her. I ran into the flames, but everything collapsed. The police found a small body, burned beyond recognition, and they said it was her. I never questioned it. Maybe I should have. Tears filled his eyes. I built everything I have now trying to bury that night, trying to forget. Brianna's eyes glistened. I'm so sorry, sir. He shook his head. No. If that pendant truly belonged to Lily, then maybe she didn't die. Maybe she was taken, or maybe someone found her before the fire reached her. I don't know, but I'll find out. For a long time, they stood in silence. The air between them was heavy with things neither of them could say. Just then, a sharp voice came from the doorway. Michael, are you still wasting time on that girl? Laura Harris stood there, wearing a silk robe and dark glasses. Her face was cold, her lips pressed tight. Michael turned to her. You shouldn't be here. I live here, she snapped, and I want that thief gone. I've called the police. They'll come this afternoon. Brianna's eyes widened in fear. The police? Michael's tone turned firm. You will not call anyone. Do you understand me? Laura laughed bitterly. You're defending her now? Look at you, Michael, letting a maid manipulate you. I said enough. His voice echoed through the study. For a moment, Laura went silent. She had never seen him raise his voice like that. Then she glared at Brianna with burning hatred. This isn't over, she said coldly before turning and leaving. When she was gone, Michael sat down, rubbing his forehead. I'm sorry you had to hear that, he said softly. Brianna shook her head. It's all right, sir. I understand. No, he said, looking at her. You don't. No one deserves to be treated like that. Brianna's eyes filled with tears. All my life, I just wanted to belong somewhere. The orphanage was kind, but I always felt like I didn't fit. Sometimes I'd dream of people calling my name, a name I didn't know. Maybe it was Lily. Her words hit him like a wave. Michael stood and walked toward her, stopping just a few feet away. If the results prove that you're her, he said, you will never have to feel alone again. Brianna looked up at him, her eyes red. Thank you, sir. Outside, the sky darkened, and thunder rolled in the distance. Rain began to fall, tapping softly on the mansion's windows. As Brianna left the study, Mr. Parker met her in the hallway. Miss Walker, he said quietly, I've worked for the Harris family for 30 years. I saw that pendant once before, around little Lily's neck. If Mr. Harris believes you might be her, he's not wrong. Brianna stopped walking. You remember it? He nodded. I remember the night of the fire, too. Nothing burns away the truth forever. When she reached her room, Brianna sat by the window, watching the rain fall. For the first time, she wondered if her whole life had been leading to this moment. Maybe the fire didn't take everything. Maybe it just hid her from the world until now. Upstairs, Michael stood in his study once more, the storm flashing outside. He looked at the old picture again, then at the empty space beside him. "If you're really Lily," he whispered to himself, "I swear I'll make it right this time." The thunder rumbled louder, and somewhere deep in the mansion, Laura's voice carried through the halls, angry and trembling, planning something that no one saw coming. The rain stopped before morning, but the air inside the Harris mansion still felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Everyone moved quietly, afraid of saying the wrong thing. The maids whispered in the hallway, the butler kept his steps light, and even the kitchen staff worked in silence. Word had spread that something serious was happening upstairs, something that could change everything. Brianna woke early and dressed in her uniform. Her hands trembled as she buttoned her collar. She didn't know what the day would bring, but deep inside her, she felt something shifting. Every sound in the house seemed louder: the ticking of the clock, the squeak of the floor, the sound of footsteps near her door. At exactly 9, there was a knock. Mr. Parker stood there again, calm as always, but his voice was softer this time. "Mr. Harris would like to see you in the study, Miss Walker." "The lawyer has returned." Brianna nodded, her stomach twisting. She followed him down the hallway, her shoes tapping lightly against the marble floor. Her heart felt heavy in her chest. When she reached the study, Michael Harris was sitting at his desk. Adam Reed stood beside him with a sealed envelope in his hand. The air was thick with tension. "Sit down, Brianna," Michael said quietly. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. Her eyes went to the envelope, then to Michael's face. He looked pale, as if he hadn't slept. Adam cleared his throat. "The results are in," he said. "Mr. Harris, would you like to open them?" Michael took the envelope, but didn't move for a long moment. His fingers shook slightly as he broke the seal. He pulled out the paper and read it slowly, his eyes moving across each line like he was afraid to breathe. Then his hand dropped to his side. Tears filled his eyes. "It's her," he whispered. His voice broke. "She's Lily." Brianna froze. Her heart stopped for a moment. "What?" she said softly. Michael stood up, the paper trembling in his hand. "You are my sister, Brianna. You're Lily Harris." Tears fell down her cheeks before she could speak. Her voice cracked. "That can't be, sir. I mean, I never knew. I thought I was alone." Michael walked to her and took her hands gently. "You were never alone. I just didn't know where to find you." His voice was full of pain and relief mixed together. "All these years I thought you died in that fire. But you survived. Somehow, you survived." Brianna covered her mouth as she cried. "The nuns said someone left me at the orphanage. They didn't know who. I never thought—" He nodded, his tears falling freely now. "It doesn't matter how. What matters is you're here now." Adam quietly stepped back, giving them space. The moment felt sacred, but then the door burst open. Laura Harris stood there, her face pale and furious. "What is going on here?" she shouted. "Michael, you can't be serious. She's the maid. You're letting this ridiculous story destroy us." Michael turned to her, his voice calm but cold. "It's not a story, Laura. She's my sister. I have proof." Laura laughed bitterly. "Proof? DNA tests can be faked. She's lying, Michael, and you're too soft to see it." Adam spoke up firmly. "Mrs. Harris, the test was handled through a certified lab. There's no mistake." Laura's hands trembled. No, this can't be happening," she muttered, pacing the room. "You're throwing away your reputation, our name for her?" She pointed at Brianna, her voice dripping with venom. "She's nothing." "Enough!" Michael's voice thundered through the room. "Don't you dare speak to her like that. You almost killed her last night." Laura's face twisted with anger. "She was stealing from us! You saw that pendant! How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't supposed to hurt anyone," Michael interrupted. You let jealousy blind you, Laura. You didn't just hurt her, you attacked my sister. For the first time, Laura's expression faltered. Your sister? She repeated softly. That's impossible. Michael took a deep breath. I'm calling the police. She froze. What? He reached for the phone on his desk. You assaulted an innocent woman. There will be consequences. Michael, please, she begged, her voice breaking. We can fix this. I'll apologize. We'll leave town for a while. No, he said firmly. You've done enough. Brianna sat silently, tears still running down her face. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The same man who had always looked distant was now standing up for her. Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the hall. Laura tried to keep her composure, but her hands shook as they read her rights. Cameras were already waiting outside the gate, flashing lights against the mansion's wall. As they led her out, Laura turned back toward Michael. You'll regret this, she hissed. You're ruining our family. Michael looked at her calmly. Our family was ruined long before today. I'm just finally telling the truth. When the doors closed behind her, silence filled the mansion again. Adam Reed sighed. It's going to be everywhere by morning. The press already knows about last night. Michael nodded. Let them talk. The truth deserves to be heard. He turned to Brianna, who was still sitting there quietly. You don't have to hide anymore, he said softly. From this day on, you're not the maid of this house. You're family. Brianna wiped her tears, her voice shaking. I don't know what to say, sir. Say nothing, he said gently. Just stay. That's all I ask. Later that night, Michael stood in front of the mansion's gates with Adam beside him. Reporters shouted questions from behind the barrier, cameras flashing non-stop. The story had already spread, the Harris iron case. Michael faced the crowd and spoke calmly. Last night, my wife attacked a member of our household, accusing her of theft. Today, I discovered that same woman, Brianna Walker, is my sister, Lily Harris, who was believed dead 24 years ago. I will not hide the truth. I will not protect cruelty, even if it comes from within my own home. Justice will be served. His words echoed through the microphones. For a moment, the crowd went silent. Then the flashes continued, brighter than before. Inside the mansion, Brianna stood by the window, watching her brother on the news screen. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a servant, but as someone who finally belonged. As the night grew quiet, Michael returned to his study. The old photograph still sat on his desk. He picked it up, looking at Lily's small smile. Welcome home, Lily, he whispered, tears filling his eyes again. Outside, Chicago's skyline shimmered under the night sky, and for the first time in 24 years, the Harris mansion wasn't hiding pain anymore. It was learning to breathe again. Weeks passed, but the echoes of that night still lived in every corner of the Harris estate. The servants moved with quiet respect now, not fear. Reporters no longer camped outside the gate, though the world still spoke about the Harris iron case. Chicago had turned its attention from scandal to admiration. People wanted to see what the billionaire would do next. Inside the mansion, Michael Harris sat by the grand piano in the living room, papers scattered on the table beside him. He wasn't reading them. He was listening. From the hallway came the soft hum of a voice, Brianna's voice. She was helping Mrs. Turner arrange fresh flowers, her laugh gentle, her tone filled with life. The sound made the whole house feel human again. For the first time in years, Michael smiled without forcing it. The doorbell rang. Mr. Parker opened it, and Adam Reed walked in with a folder under his arm. Morning, Michael, he said. Morning, Michael replied, standing to greet him. I finalized the paperwork, Adam said, handing over the folder. The Harris Foundation is officially under new co-leadership. You and your sister are now equal chairs. Michael nodded, opening the folder. His eyes softened when he saw the name Lily Brianna Harris printed clearly beside his own. "It still feels strange," he said quietly. "All these years, I thought I'd never hear her name again." Adam smiled. "Sometimes truth takes the longest road home." Before leaving, Adam placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "She's good for this house, Michael, and she's good for you." When he was gone, Michael turned toward the window. Outside, the city stretched far and wide, the same city that once judged him now, waiting to see what he would build next. Downstairs, Brianna placed a vase of white lilies on the dining table. She had insisted on filling the house with them, saying they reminded her of peace. The other staff had started treating her with new respect, though she still spoke to them with the same quiet kindness. Mrs. Turner entered the room smiling. "Miss Lily," she said, using the name proudly now, "Mr. Harris would like to see you." Brianna nodded, brushing her hands on her apron before heading upstairs. She knocked softly on the study door. "Come in," Michael said. When she entered, he looked up and smiled faintly. "You can stop calling me sir, you know." She smiled shyly. "It still feels strange calling you anything else." "Then call me Michael," he said warmly. "Just Michael." She nodded. "All right, Michael." They both laughed softly, the tension between them finally gone. He gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to tell you something. Tomorrow we're having a press conference. I'm going to announce that the Harris Foundation will focus on orphaned children and young women who've faced abuse or injustice. I want you to speak beside me." "Me?" she asked in surprise. "Yes, you," he said firmly. "You've lived that pain. You know what it means to feel forgotten. People will listen to you." Her eyes filled with emotion. "I don't know if I can do that, Michael." He reached across the table and gently held her hand. "You already did something much harder, Lily. You forgave." Her eyes softened. "I didn't forgive her to make her free. I forgave her to make myself free." He nodded. "That's exactly why you're the right one to speak." The next day, the mansion gates opened again, but this time the flashing cameras were not for scandal, they were for hope. Reporters filled the garden as Michael and Brianna stood side by side on the podium. Michael spoke first. "A few months ago, this house stood for silence, for secrets, for power. Today, it stands for truth and second chances. I found my sister again, and in finding her, I found myself." Then he turned to Brianna. "Lily, would you like to say something?" Brianna stepped forward slowly, her heart racing, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath. "My name is Lily Harris," she said softly. "But most of my life, I was called Brianna Walker. I grew up in an orphanage, not knowing who I was or where I came from. I worked here as a maid, thinking I was serving a stranger. But God had other plans. I was never lost, I was just waiting to be found." Her voice trembled, but she continued. "I want every child out there who feels forgotten to know that truth has a way of finding you, even when the world says it won't." The crowd went silent. Then, applause filled the air. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder proudly. For the first time in decades, he felt his heart at peace. Later that week, Michael and Lily visited their parents' graves at the old cemetery on the edge of Chicago. The wind was gentle, the sky painted with soft gold. Lily knelt down and placed her gold pendant, the one that started it all, between their headstones. "This belongs here," she said quietly. Michael stood beside her, his voice low. "They would be proud of you, Lily. Of both of us." She smiled through her tears. "I used to think the fire ended everything, but maybe it was just the beginning." He looked at her, his voice tender. "It was the night we both started learning what family really means." They stood there for a long time, the silence between them no longer painful, just peaceful. The wind rustled the grass around them, carrying away the old sorrow. Back at the mansion, life slowly returned to normal. The staff laughed more, the rooms no longer echoed with fear, and the Harris Foundation began its first major project, building homes for orphaned children in Chicago. Every time Lily walked through the halls, she felt warmth instead of shame. The same house that once tried to break her now carried her name. That evening, she stood by the grand staircase as Michael came down, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her and smiled. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if that night never happened?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I think about it every day. But then I realize, if it hadn't, I might never have found you." Lily smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then maybe the fire didn't destroy our family. Maybe it just lit the path back home." Michael looked at her for a long moment, his heart full. "Yes," he said quietly, "it brought you home." As night fell over Chicago, the lights of the Harris estate glowed softly against the sky. Inside, laughter echoed faintly down the halls, the sound of a family learning to heal. The mansion that once held pain now stood for forgiveness, truth, and love. And in her room, before she went to bed, Lily looked at the empty space on her neck where the pendant used to be. She smiled. The gold was gone, but the meaning had stayed. The past had burned them once, but the truth had rebuilt them, stronger than before. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that sometimes life hides the truth until the right moment. Michael spent years burying his pain, and Brianna lived her whole life searching for a place to belong. Yet, one moment of cruelty revealed what destiny had kept hidden, that love, no matter how lost, always finds its way home. The Harris mansion was once a place of silence and pain, but when truth stepped in, it became a place of healing and forgiveness. Brianna forgave not because it was easy, but because she refused to let hate live where peace could grow. This story teaches that family is not only blood, it is the courage to forgive, the strength to love, and the honesty to stand for what is right, even when it hurts. No matter how dark the past feels, the truth will always rise, just like the morning after a long storm. So, dear viewers, tell us, what lesson did you learn from this story? Comment where you are watching from, and share what part touched your heart the most. If you believe that truth and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more emotional and powerful stories like this one, comment "more stories" below, and you will be the first to get our next touching release.